Okay, so this is SAT Practice 3, which is from practice test number 1 in the College Board's test examples. And this is section 3, the first math section. So number 1, it says if x minus 1 over 3 equals k, and k equals 3, what is the value of x? So for some of you, you might look at this and be like, oh, super, super easy. And some of us just don't see that it's asking us to use substitution. So I think I've said in a few of my classes before that sometimes substitution is the answer, like in problems that you wouldn't expect it randomly. So we know that k is 3, so everywhere we see a k, we're going to put a 3. So now you have an equation that has one variable and one variable that you can solve for, which is x. So we're going to multiply by 3 on both sides to clear the fraction. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. So if x minus 1 equals 9, so x is 10. Okay, number 2. For I equals the square root of negative 1, what is the sum of 7 plus 3i plus negative 8 plus 9i? So this is a good example of you being able to do something that you haven't really learned about. So they're giving you a statement here. I equals the square root of negative 1. And in Algebra 2, we haven't learned about imaginary numbers yet, but this is an imaginary number. So you don't really have to be concerned about that because really what you're doing here is just adding polynomials the way that you know how to add polynomials. The parentheses don't really mean much. 7 and negative 8 are like terms, so I can cross these out. And 3i and 9i are like terms, so the answer is A. So really quick, not really too much math needed. And there is higher level information in this, and they try to confuse you with the highlighted statement, but don't worry about it. We haven't learned about it yet, but you can still get the answer right. Okay, number 3. On Saturday afternoon, Armin sent M text messages each hour for 5 hours. Tyrone sent P text messages, each hour for 4 hours. Which of the following represents the total number of messages sent? So total number usually means that you're adding the two. We're going to notice that Armand, which we're using M for, was 5 hours. So make sure that you choose the one where M is 5 rather than D is they mix up the coefficients and the variables, which is common on the SAT to how they make their answer choices. And then the other two, they added terms that weren't like in choice A, and choice B, they multiplied. So choice C, the correct answer. Okay, and number 4. Kathy is a repair technician for a phone company. Each week, she receives a batch of phones that need repairs. The number of phones that she has left to fix at the end of each day can be estimated by the equation. So this is important because it really tells you what is being modeled here, where P is the number of phones left. So at the end of the day, whatever P is how many phones she has left. And D is the number of days she has worked that week. What is the meaning of the value 108? So we have the equation P equals 108 minus 3D. And if you'd like to relate this to what you have learned in school, this equation is a linear function where we have an input and an output, an x value or a y value. This is your slope, and that's your output, y. So you could write this as y equals mx plus b. If you wanted to, I just changed the x and the y, but you could keep it as p and d. And then you have a slope and a y-intercept. So why that helps us is because the vocabulary slope and y-intercept always means something specific. Slope is always your starting point, y-intercept is always your starting point, and slope is always what's changing. So if you can relate that to the words in this problem, it's going to make it a lot simpler. So let's read the choices. Kathy will complete the repairs within 108 days. Remember that the y-intercept is a starting point. So the fact that it's going to take 108 days, remember that D counted for days. So 108 isn't going to be something that's represented with the word days. Choice B, Kathy starts each week with 108 phones. The key word starts here tells me that this could be a possible answer. Now, on SAT, you can't just put the first answer that you like because you might find one that's better. And they say that in the directions that you're going to choose the best answer. So I like choice B because it has a vocab word that I already brought up earlier. Choice C, Kathy repairs phones at a rate of 108 per hour. Well, you know that rate of change is slope. So they're definitely talking about a slope here. Per hour means it's going to have a variable, and 108 doesn't have a variable. So C doesn't sound like a good option. Kathy repairs phones at a rate of 108 per day. Still, again, the rate talks about slope, 108 per day. 108 doesn't have a variable, so definitely our best choice here is B. Okay, and a lot of times you may know the answer to this easily within a few seconds, but the thought process here is going to help us to be able to solve bigger problems like this. So I would still practice going through all of these like I am now, relating it to information you learned in school so that when you do get bigger and badder problems, you're able to solve them using the same methods.